is James Arnold Taylor, voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Welcome to a more civilized podcast. This is the podcast you're looking for. You may not go about your business. Stay here, listen, and then move along.
Hey there, Star Wars fans. We're back for another episode of a more civilized podcast. I'm Kyler.
I'm Chris.
I'm Russ.
Wow. That threw me off.
Yeah, we had to go around the table
the
wrong direction.
Here,
Yeah, so if you remember from last episode, that was our last episode recorded in the old civilized studio. We're in the new civilized studio. And Chris is on the other side of the table from where he normally sits.
No. Normally, one of you is in the middle like this.
Me and Chris have switched places, I think is really...
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is now, instead of going like... I don't know. I guess it's still clockwise.
Before.
It's still clockwise.
It's counterclockwise.
Or counterclockwise.
Now, yeah.
It's totally throwing me off.
It's just wonky. I'm not used to being between
these two.
Normally
Ross was on my right and Chris was on my left, and everything was right in the world, and now it's backwards. Whew. Boy, that is going to take some getting used to.
Well, and then when we have guests on, it'll probably switch back. Because I'll probably put Chris here on my right.
I know.
Cool.
So we'll just keep us on our toes.
Technically the only reason it's like this is because you came in first and sat there. So
well, Ross and I were talking about it before you got here. That
okay.
Because I'm loud, that maybe here would be better, so that there's more things to buffer my
scatter
noise.
his reflected noise.
That's fair.
Because I have a carrying voice, as my mother would say.
True.
So anyway, Ross, save us from this insanity by a return to normalcy with the news.
The newsy news?
Yep.
The newsiest news.
That ever news. It's catching on!
Yes!
No!
Yes! That's all it needs is just relentless repetition. All right. So, to start us off, we are disseminating more details from the Vanity Fair article from a few weeks ago now at this point. This in particular is a confirmation that our desert planet that we have seen is not in fact what my theory was of Tatooine.
Or Tatooine.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be Tatooine.
Yeah, those were the two big ones we saw. As people were like, oh, it's Tatooine. Oh,
this one is
Jakku.
Tatuku.
Yeah.
No, this one's named Pasana.
Yep.
Pasana.
It sounds like a fancy bottled water.
Yes, it does. You're right.
It used to, in fact, be a vast oasis.
And then Nestle got there.
Exactly. That's actually how the Emperor funded his initial senatorial campaigns. Is he started up a Pasana water company.
Man.
Yeah.
Got the planet named after his company.
Disney, you're welcome to any of those ideas if you wish. I think they're golden.
Yep, so, and it just goes to show you that apparently there is a higher number than you'd expect of desert planets in the galaxy far, far away.
You know, it's technically the most plausible single biome planet, that and the frozen planet,
Yeah.
so...
Yeah,
you know.
you're too close or too far away from your sun, so...
Yeah.
But the other major problem
Single
is just
biome.
that...
There would still be biomes,
right.
of course, but...
Well, and that, I mean, it still could all be within what we would consider desert.
Yeah,
the entire
exactly.
planet.
It can all be
But
desert, and it still have multiple biomes, but...
the fact that every planet we've ever seen is always made up of a single biome, or what we would call a single biome.
That's what we love about Star Wars.
It's true.
It's okay.
It's so good.
Yep.
That's why Anakin was so delighted when he left Tatooine and was like, not only is this not a desert planet, but there's no sand anywhere because that biome is not here.
The biome is not present on this world. Oh, man.
Who are we to say how physics works in a galaxy far, far away?
True.
I mean, come on.
Physics doesn't seem to work, so...
Yeah. Does not apply. Next, we have Kyler's favorite bit of information for this week.
Boy.
Is the preview for Star Wars, The Clone Wars Season 7. Kyler.
I cannot wait for this. Holy crap. Okay. So I can't remember if I correctly predicted the order of this, and I was going to go back and listen, and then I didn't.
I remember the order, and you did not. You switched the first two arcs.
I thought that was the case, but I wanted to go listen to be sure, but whatever.
Yeah.
So here we go. Oh, yeah, actually, now that I'm looking at the list, you're right. I had switched them. So, Season 7, Episodes 1 through 4 will be the Bad Batch episodes, with the, like, Rambo clones or whatever. Anyway. Those are available. You can find them on YouTube easily. Just look up Bad Batch Clone Wars. You can find them on YouTube. The animations there are not finished, obviously, because that's from years ago when things were canceled before they were ready. But you can still hear all the voice acting and stuff. That was all done. And the story is really pretty good.
Are they Are they using the original stuff?
They are using some of the original. They re-recorded some of it.
Okay.
But again, the overall story is going to be the same. So if you want a sneak peek for season 7 of Clone Wars, go on YouTube.
Yeah.
And those episodes are really quite good. Again, I've seen them. They're really good. Then we have episodes 5 through 8. Ahsoka, after leaving the Jedi Order, she goes down to Coruscant level 1313, where that awesome-looking game would have taken place.
Yep.
Had everyone involved not been idiots and canceled it prematurely. And those will be pretty good, too. There are some clips, not full episodes, but some clips of that story arc available on YouTube also.
Are they the ones that they showed at Celebration?
Those are the ones they showed. Yeah, the ones they showed at Celebration now have the finished, polished animation, whereas the ones before didn't. And some of them, and by unpolished and unfinished, I mean sometimes it was like just storyboard images placed over the audio, the talking and things. Season 7, episodes 9 through 12, which will finish out the season, is the Siege of Mandalore, with Ahsoka returning to help Rex and Anakin and the other Republic, officers and whatever, retake or liberate Mandalore from Darth Maul, I believe, the Shadow Collective.
Because they did show a bit of that fight in the previous.
Yeah. So that should be super cool to see. Because, I mean, some of the best parts of the Clone Wars was seeing a war, seeing these big, dramatic, epic battles. And I'm pretty sure that's what we're going to get in the Siege of Mandalore, is some of those really classic battle scenes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then finally, today's news, hot off the press, is they've finally revealed some actual gameplay, full 15 minutes of gameplay from the new Jedi Fallen Order game to be released this November. So for those of you that are game people, this looks like it's going to be much more in the vein of Force Unleashed than anything like Jedi Knight.
A toned down
as far as gameplay goes.
Yes.
Like it's going to play similarly in mechanics.
Like halfway between Force Unleashed and the Jedi Knight game.
Yeah. And it looks good. Like just the couple minutes. I only watched about 5 minutes of the little panel or whatever they showed today.
Yeah, it was just the gameplay reveals all of this.
And it looks, as far as like what your character's doing as he's running around and killing stormtroopers and stuff, it looks really similar, like Ross said, to Force Unleashed. Although I will say the kills, like taking down the stormtroopers, looks way better here than it did then. Yeah. Which is to be expected. I mean, Force Unleashed is like, 10 years old now? Something like that. Yeah, maybe even a little. The first one, maybe even a little older.
It would be about that. I wanted to say it was...
Because when did it come out? It was mid-2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, so I guess we're like 15 years-ish then.
Potentially.
Whatever it is. 10-plus-ish years ago.
Apparently I need to look this up.
So you would expect it to look a little bit better.
But 2004 is what sticks out in my brain, but I could be wrong.
That could be it, too.
But, anyway.
But it looked pretty good, though. I mean, some of those blaster shots and stuff, and it's leaving the scorch marks on the stormtroopers. When you're cutting through them, it leaves a scorch mark on their armor. So I'm happy with the little details like that.
I saw someone on the live stream chat upset that there weren't full dismemberments. So
there should be. I mean, for reals, we got the mechanics to do it.
Technically, yes. And yes, there is the technology to do it, but there's more of a content issue.
I don't care, Ross.
Released in September 2008, so that is 11 years old.
Okay. Oh, I was right.
Pushing
right
11 years
then.
old.
Yeah, no, come on, Ross. If I cut your head with a lightsaber, I want to see it spin across the floor, okay?
But when you're selling the game to an audience that,
just give me the bloodshed.
13-year-old, I know.
But see, if you do that in the video games, eventually you're going to get that rated R Star Wars movie that you don't want.
Yeah. Okay, that's true. Fair. All right, I'll think
and I feel like they are still, like we were talking about before, they are taking a lot of cues from the old Jedi Knight series. And they also have added in Kylo Ren's freeze ability. They're calling it Force Slow, where you just have a unit or something that you don't want to move, and he just kind of stops there for a bit until you're ready to deal with him. They even had it where your character slows one of the stormtroopers that he's fighting. That right after the stormtrooper has fired a shot, so the shot is going slow. You force pull the stormtrooper around the shot, move him over in front of it, and then let him go. and he gets shot in the back by his own
himself.
blaster shot. So that was a cool addition. You haven't really seen that ability before.
I've seen that not in a Star Wars game. I've seen that in other games.
Sure.
Dishonored games had you could use abilities to do that. Yeah, that's I particularly enjoyed a comic. It was it's either Control Alt Delete or Penny Arcade, where they had one where he did that to switch the guard around, so the guard ended up shooting themselves, and then just checked off a list as like causes of guard deaths, and it was like rats, couple of check marks, ravens, couple of check marks, irony, filled with check marks.
So, I mean, it's fun that they're adding things. They're trying new things to add new things to the formula of a Star Wars game. So,
I was telling these guys beforehand that I read an article on Escapist that basically said it's just like this, this looks as boring as a Star Wars game needs to be. And that's good. And it's basically like, yeah, this is safe, comfortable, familiar. We're not really trying anything groundbreaking or, at least as far as the video game industry goes. And that's probably a good idea right now.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like they might also be focusing or pushing more towards the story focused.
Potentially.
Because in the reveal, they're going to have Saw Gerrera taking part, at least in the beginning of the game.
Yeah,
they
I saw
also
that
brought
part.
Forrest Whitaker back to voice him.
Oh.
So, if you're going to spend the time and money to actually get an A-list actor, well, I mean...
Unless,
A-list.
I was going to say, you're going to use them, make use of the time is what you're going to say?
Well, or make sure that it's attached to a quality product.
Yeah,
So-
that's fair. I was going to say, because I was like, unless you're Bethesda,
Yeah.
Sir Patrick Stewart, here, record a few lines and then we're going to kill your character. Oh, hey, Liam Neeson, come over here. Yeah, like, constantly.
And it might be, I mean, what they
Of course,
showed...
they use Sean Bean well, though. So.
as well as Sean Bean gets used.
He doesn't even die. Well, he does technically die at the end, I guess. My bad. Backing off that.
Sean Bean never lives.
Yeah. So, hopefully it'll something that'll kick off a new era of good Star Wars games, I'm hoping. This one, they did ask if there was going to be a branching light side, dark side path to this game. They came right out and said, no, this is a Jedi story, so it'll just be light side.
Yeah.
I endorse this.
Yeah.
Well, at least they're being straightforward with the story.
Yes.
And not deceiving us like Battlefront 2's story. Hey, come play this cool Dark Imperial campaign for 3 missions and then play like 30 missions as the good guys because you defected, predictably.
Yeah.
You turds.
But, so, I mean, I'm hoping. Especially with linear single-player games having had some really solid entries over the recent years. And hopefully it's been given the time and energy that it needs to really be good and, again, kick off the genre, the Star Wars genre.
I'm hoping... And I know that my hope here is totally wasted, but for a new Star Wars strategy game, kind of like Empire at War.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that came out in 2006. So 13 years later since the
been a while.
last Star Wars strategy game. And I think before that, 2000 with...
Galactic Battlegrounds.
I always forget about Galactic Battlegrounds. Because 2000 was the first strategy game with Force Commander.
Yeah.
And then you had, 2004 or 5 or something
Battlegrounds
like that was Battlegrounds.
The shadow release, except for those in the Star Wars community.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that ever knew about it.
And then Empire at War. So you had, a 6-year window where strategy games for Star Wars were being produced, and then nothing. Okay, so that's the news, right?
Yep.
Wonderful.
Apparently.
Okay, so if you have not read the episode description, or if you're like me and you listen on iTunes and it doesn't give you the episode
it just
description.
popped up and you never looked at it.
Yeah. The episode is about David Prowse, the actual physical body of Darth Vader. So we all know James Earl Jones is the voice, the very intimidating and sexy voice.
Yes, sir.
But David Prowse actually fills the suit. And he's got a pretty interesting life and career. And there's a really killer documentary. We're going to talk more about the documentary in a minute. So remind me to get there when it's time. So just some basic bio information about David Prowse. He was born the 1st of July, 1935. He is, as of the time of this recording, still alive. Though he is getting up in years. Yeah. He's in his 80s now.
He was born in 35, so he is going to be 84 in just a couple weeks.
Yep.
July 1st.
So Yeah, 84. He has had some health problems, like he suffered from arthritis and
Severe
stuff.
arthritis.
Yeah. And a couple other things. He was married in 1963 to Norma E. Scammell, who was delightful from what information we saw in the documentary. He's got 3 kids. He was a towering 6'6", and he was just about that broad too. There were some pictures in the documentary of him standing next to Carrie Fisher, like outside of, like, just in regular clothes as they're like doing promotional, whatever. And he's like 2.5 heads taller than Carrie Fisher.
Yeah,
like,
what you see in the films is correct.
When we were watching the documentary, I said that to you guys. I'm like, it's incredible because we're so used to nowadays of, well, he's the hero, so he needs to look tall or whatever, camera tricks. We don't even think about the actual height of actors because camera tricks are so frequently used, right?
Very few people at first glance would ever guess that Tom Cruise is as short as he is. He's like 5'7" or 5'8".
Yeah, he's super short, but everybody thinks he's 6 and some change, maybe.
Yeah. Super short for a Hollywood lead.
For a Hollywood lead actor, yeah, exactly. But David Prowse, man, is 6'6", and he towers above everybody else, like, except Peter Mayhew. He's like the only person who can look down at David Prowse. Yeah. And even that's only by a few inches. So that's just nuts. He, in 2000, was appointed the member of the Order of the British Empire, received an award from the Queen of England. We'll talk about why in just a minute.
That was a great shot, too, where she's standing on, like, 2 steps higher than him, pinning this on his chest, and she
he's still taller than her.
Yeah, she still comes up to, like, his nose.
It's crazy. He just, I was like, man, because he does, like, this little teeny bow, and I'm like, he would have to, like, completely bend over to, like, get shorter than the Queen. He's so tall. And then in 2016, he retired from all public appearances due to his health and age and, age-related health issues. So he's no longer going to be at any cons. So if you've been to a con and got to meet him, you're one of the lucky ones. Unlike me, I never got the chance, unfortunately. So before he started acting, he was a weightlifter. He was a bodybuilder kind of a guy. He had a job as a bouncer for a while, which I'm going, yeah, that makes sense. He could take you out if you needed, and there wouldn't be much you could do about it. He was the British heavyweight lifting champion in 1962, 63, and 64. Yeah. 3 years in a row. After that, he went on to do like the Mr. Universe competition. The dude is ripped. He's like a fetching marble statue of somebody where they're like, let's show off every muscle in the human body. That's what David Prowse looks like in his prime without a shirt on. Yeah. He's got muscles that I'm like, are those muscles that are on human beings? Because I've never seen that before in my life. He is so ripped. It's crazy. And he's a fairly handsome dude, I think. He's got that chiseled jawline. Anyway, be sure to look up a picture of David Prowse because we can't fully create the visual here. But he got a little bit into acting in 1975. So 2 years before his role as Darth Vader in 1977, Star Wars, right? In 1975, in the UK, so he was already kind of well known in the UK because he was this weightlifting champion and had done, Olympics and the Mr. Universe competition, things like that.
He was the Schwarzenegger of the UK.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I can't believe it. I didn't think of that. Yeah. So in Britain at this time, there was a huge epidemic, I think is probably a good word, of pedestrian vehicle accidents, where people would be crossing the streets and not looking, and cars would hit them. And
I think it was particularly children, correct?
Yeah, and especially little kids. The figure that the documentary gave us was a little over 40,000 injuries per year. The year before David Prowse got involved, 40,000 pedestrian accidents, which is terrible, and especially when you think that the majority of that's going to be little kids.
And that's just the UK.
Yeah, and that was just the UK. So the UK came up with the Green Cross Code, basically a PSA campaign for television. that had this superhero, the Green Cross Man.
The Green Cross Code Man.
Green Cross Code Man, who was David Prowse, who was there to help
wearing
teach
a spectacular
these.
white
Oh man, it's so good.
White with the green
with
tidies.
like this green like Knights Templar cross only green.
green shoulder pads jutting out.
Oh, it's an X, yeah. But so he's a white and green Superman almost.
Yeah.
Only with instead of an S,
with
it was
some
a green cross.
with some rock and green shoulder pads.
Oh, dude, yeah, those shoulder pads were pretty spectacular. And he did a whole series of PSAs for the UK to help teach kids, like, look, when you come to the, when you're trying to cross the street, don't wait on the curb. Stand back a little bit. You look, you listen, all those things that are common sense now.
Be careful, because when you run up to the curb, I won't be there to save you.
It was a little anticlimactic on that one. But the year that these launched, they reduced the number of injuries and fatalities and stuff from over 40,000 to just under 20,000. So he cut it in half, which is incredible. And so then
attribute it to that campaign.
Yeah. Everybody, like all the officials and stuff, they're like, no, this campaign, David Prowse, everybody knew who he was. He was this household name.
In fact, when he was cast as Vader, they were concerned that this might be a problem because he's got this important public image, and we're worried if he's playing some villain that it's going to be a problem. And of course, it was not. But because nobody ever saw his face.
So yeah, I mean that's pretty impressive that he reduced the number of injuries and stuff.
That program, obviously, but he was obviously centrally enough.
Man
and he's centrally enough related to all of it that he received quite the accolade for it. So
which is pretty cool. So after that, he did some acting as well. He was in Clockwork Orange, as a bodyguard.
He surprisingly did a lot of things.
Yeah, he did a bunch of monster movies,
Frankenstein movies.
But I mentioned Clockwork Orange because that is what put him on George Lucas's radar.
Yes,
as someone who might potentially be the
Julian Alexander's bodyguard.
Yep. So that put him on George Lucas's thing, and then just a couple of other acting tidbits for him. He trained Christopher Reeve, did the body training or whatever.
Which the interesting thing, the reason he got that job is because he actually went out to audition for Superman, and when they called him to let him know that they'd found their Superman, they'd cast the part, and it wasn't him, but the way they phrased it was that we found our Superman, and he thought they meant him. And so he was and then they found out, nope, but we want you to train him. So he trained Christopher Reeves.
Which is, kind of been David Prowse's story.
Oh, man, yeah.
I mean, every single step he took, there was some disappointment where people kind of led him to believe he was going to have a little bit of a better part than what he actually had,
Yeah. What fun story, though, for that, he kept adding weight in 5-pound increments to Christopher Reeves' weightlifting until he couldn't do any more, and then he said, cool, that's where we're going to start tomorrow. And then worked him from there. Christopher Reeve said that was the hardest part of filming for Superman, was being trained by
well, and if you've seen pictures of him before he played Superman, he wasn't a thick guy, and it was that was one of those castings where it was like Heath Ledger as the Joker, where it's just like, wait, what, really? And then David Prowse came along, and here we go.
Just like he did with the Joker.
Yes. Little known fact that,
and then this was crazy.
David Prowse is actually the one that gave Heath Ledger his scars as the Joker.
Another fun thing that I didn't know until I was looking at his Wikipedia page is that he trained Cary Elwes for The Princess Bride, Wesley, which I was like, wow,
that's out of nowhere.
Yeah, no kidding. But hey, Superman was great. Princess Bride is great.
Now I really want a photo of him with Cary Elwes and Andre the Giant. Just so
right? Exactly. Oh, man. Okay. So that is kind of our tidbitty stuff about...
This is the life of David Prowse.
Yeah, the life of David Prowse stuff. And then after Star Wars as well, he did a couple of other things, I think.
Yeah, he still did some acting and everything,
but Darth Vader was the big one.
Yeah.
So now on to the documentary, which is going to be the heart of our discussion today. So this documentary is called I Am Your Father. It is by Marcos Cabota. He's a Spanish guy, if you couldn't tell from my most excellent pronunciation. And you can find this documentary on, I don't know if it's on YouTube. I can't remember if that's where I saw it. You can find it on the interwebs somewhere for free because that's how I saw it. So this was made in 2015, and it is about how David Prowse basically got screwed repeatedly. Well, I mean,
it's about David Prowse. It's about his life and his experience with Star Wars. But yes, large chunks of it also focus on the way that the David Prowse dealings with Lucasfilm went, and many of which were not that flattering, allegedly.
And it's a really good documentary. They don't have anything from Lucas, probably.
Yeah, they mention at the end that Lucas graciously declined to be interviewed for this.
But they had people like Gary Kurtz, who was the producer for, I think, all three Star Wars original trilogy.
Though, according to that one, he kind of stepped back on the third one and was less involved.
But still, his name was there for it.
Yep. And he looked delightfully uncomfortable throughout that entire documentary.
He had he had costume designers and stuff on there, and he
had the other what was his name, the producer?
Kasdan? No,
or something.
No, shoot, now I can't remember.
Yep, no.
Dang it. Oh well.
Sorry.
But they had a bunch of the people basically involved with the creation of Star Wars, minus Lucas. And anybody officially working for Lucasfilm. But yeah, a bunch of these prop guys and different, stage
costume designers,
sculptors, who designed Darth Vader's costume, or well, not designed Darth Vader's costume, because I guess we technically
built the costume,
who built
and had a lot of design input.
So a lot of people who had firsthand knowledge of how things were right behind the scenes. And it's a really well-made documentary. It's 90 minutes, give or take a minute or two. And you can find it on Amazon. That's where I got it after I saw it because I loved it. But it is going to be, like, all the formatting and stuff is in Spanish. So, but you can, all the audio is in...
Yeah, the audio is English, and all the titles on the screen.
Yeah, that's what I meant by the formatting and stuff. Yeah, the title cards, the play, the scenes, the menu. Menu.
But the menu. That if you put on the English subtitles,
you're good to go.
It'll only do those things that are written.
Yeah,
there's two English subtitles. One that'll do the full text of everything everyone's saying, and then one that'll just do the written.
So you should go get it because it's really fantastic. If you're a Star Wars fan at all, I highly recommend this.
Yeah. It was very well done.
It makes a fine addition to my collection. So David Prowse gets hired to be Darth Vader, the body of Darth Vader.
So, let's even just start from the beginning. So they put out a casting call, and they had to cast both Darth Vader and Chewbacca, who they knew would be both very tall. Right. So they basically just said, instead of doing the usual, we're going to handpick some people they just said, just send us all of your tall guys.
Yep.
And so they brought them in, and they basically, he was well known enough. Lucas already had his eye on him, so they brought him in. And when they offered him, they're like, well, what would you be more interested in here? And so they described Chewbacca to him, and he was like, I don't want to walk around.
He said, he's like, it's kind of a big dog guy. He hangs out with the good
big
guys.
Gorilla suit,
and he's in a gorilla suit. And he's like, well, it's not
set in the
Yeah, he wasn't thrilled with it. I mean, he probably would have taken it anyway if that were the only thing. But he was kind of like, what's the other thing that you have?
And they're like, well, it's the villain of the piece. And he's like, all right, say no more.
Yep,
I'll take it.
Which is just great. That's exactly what I would have done in his position.
Man after my own heart.
Yep. And so he becomes the body of Darth Vader. And he goes through.
As far as he knew, he became Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm. So he gets his lines just like every other actor. He gets his script. He gets, he has to memorize them. He's there on set. He's delivering his lines. He's shoving his finger in people's faces and telling them they're going to blow up planets and all that good stuff, right? All the Darth Vader stuff we love. And then he goes to see the finished product in theaters, like everybody else, and was excited and proud of the work he'd done. And someone else's voice is saying all of his lines.
Yep.
And he had people asking him, like, wow, how did they do that? Like, the remixing, dubbing, what did they do there? And he's like, oh, that's not me.
Yep.
That's not me. That's, if nothing else, you can tell from the lack of accent.
Yeah, for real.
Because that is very evidently the reason why they dubbed in James Earl Jones is because David Prowse's voice is was first not terribly imposing. Like he's not quite as high as my register.
The register's a little higher.
But yeah, he's definitely got a bit higher of a voice, and he's got this nice soft West Country British accent that is quite appealing, but not quite. It's not Moff Tarkin British accent.
You're right. I think the first word you used is correct. It's appealing. Yeah. It sounds nice and pleasant, which is not exactly what you're going for with Darth Vader. I'm the literal embodiment of evil.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So...
But so the problem, less like, we can see why they did it. The problem is just mostly that he didn't know. He was not told that.
That's exactly the problem. Is I don't think any of the three of us would rather have had David Prowse's voice over James Earl Jones. I think James Earl Jones's voice is absolutely the right call.
And Prowse seemed to agree. I mean,
he says himself in the documentary. He's like, I heard the voice and I can see why they did it.
Yeah,
and he said, I don't have a problem with that. It's that they didn't tell me.
Yep.
The one delightful bit that they demonstrated there is now that he is 80 odd years old. When they were filming that, he would have been 80 exactly.
80, yeah.
If that was in 2015, so that was 4 years ago. He was 80. His voice has shifted and deepened with age and has become a bit more gravelly. And he actually sounds a lot like James Earl Jones. With a West British accent.
Yeah, there's one part of the documentary where
he's pretty imposing.
Where they mess with his voice a little bit to make it a little bit more like Darth Vader. Oh no, wait,
they didn't.
No. I got confused. Just this morning, I watched another documentary about David Prowse.
Oh,
it's called like "The Force is with You," or no, the Voice is with. It's something like that. I can't. There was a pun on like voice and force or something like that. And this is another like British sound person. I don't know if they're a musician or what, but somebody involved with sound over there.
Something about that.
And he's been friends with David Prowse for like 15 years. And so he's like, I just want to see, like, what would Darth Vader sound like with David Prowse doing
Justin Lee Collins, right?
Yes. And so he actually had him come and record some lines for something, something about voiceover work or something like that. And it was like, if only this kind of technology had existed a long, long time ago.
In a galaxy
far, far away. But then and he kind of had him do it kind of the deep.
Oh, here we go. I believe it was Jason Lewis was the one.
And then he kind of modulates it a little bit just like they did in the studio. And it sounds like the Darth Vader we know.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh man, we're this close, bud. This close, you know, and it could have been all you. It's kind of a bummer. But
so that was A New Hope.
That was A New Hope.
He discovered that at the end, probably justifiably put out, but he seems to have handled it in pretty dang good cheer. Like with that one, like there was not really any mention in there, at least of any of the, like they're going through old interviews and everything. There didn't seem to be any, at least outward public indication that David Prowse was terribly put out by the fact that they dubbed over him.
Yeah, well, and we even have some
I'm
of
sure
his
it was very jarring at first,
audio diaries. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
But we have some, and they play some in the documentary where he's kind of like, oh, like it was a surprise. It would have been nice to know, but I can see why they made the choice they did, and I'm fine with it. Like, that's a good choice. James Earl Jones is a great actor.
Yep.
It was the right call.
The two of them both seemed to get along really well. James Earl Jones, they had clips from an interview where he's just like, oh, David Prowse he's Darth Vader. Like, I'm just a voice actor that dubs some stuff in. Like, he is Vader.
Yeah, which is
very classy.
Very classy for him as well.
Both classy gentlemen.
Which, again, makes me go, if both halves of Darth Vader are agreeing kind of on how things go, you know, that David Prowse really is this, and I'm just here to do this, and David Prowse is going, well, I really do feel like I'm Darth Vader. It would have been nice to know, but I can see, you know, his voice adds some intense intimidation to the character. Okay, well. I'm cool with this. It really seems like there's only one place for the blame to fall, and that would be on Lucasfilm for not telling him.
Yeah. It's a really odd choice. It's very dismissive, and that just
and it's sad.
I almost wonder if someone was just scared too because he was so loud. Like, and I'm not even joking. Like, I literally wonder if someone who would have been responsible for that was like, he's such a big dude, he's clearly gonna fly off the handle just because he's a large guy, and that's they just were like, you know what, we're not even gonna risk it, which is dumb.
Yeah.
Well, and
if that is the case, that's wholly speculation on my part.
I think a lot of that communication ends up going through agents anyway, though, doesn't it?
Theoretically,
so.
I would think so.
You know, theoretically, yes, that would be something that would go through an agent, and that might also be why they didn't bring it up, because if it goes through an agent, that agent's going to go, okay, well, like this is, and so like I'm going to try and we're going to try and work a deal here, or figure out something that's going to be more to my client's advantage. You're going to treat him unscrupulously.
But and I think if that's all it had ever been, we wouldn't have this documentary.
Well,
we wouldn't be doing this episode, at least not in this format. And so what happens after this is, so Star Wars is obviously a really surprise runaway hit. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves it. Everybody's talking about it. And of course, people are like, David Prowse, you're Darth Vader. Let's interview you. As they're doing, of course, with Harrison Ford and with Carrie Fisher. Mm-hmm. And they're, of course, getting more of the American media attention. But David Prowse is already, as we discussed, a kind of a known British household name, right? Because of the green crossguard man.
Green crosscode man.
Green crosscode man. It's a mouthful, guys.
It is.
Even watching the documentary, we just finished watching it, and it's still a little bit to work around. So the British Daily Mail, big publication, still a big publication actually today, is like, hey, you're our homegrown star here. Let's talk. And you're Darth Vader, right? We want to know. So in an interview in, what was it, 1977 still. I think it was just after Star Wars came out.
Yeah, it was literally like they still weren't even quite aware of how big this thing was.
Yeah. It was just like, oh, this is doing well. It's a popular movie. Let's do an interview with a lead actor, right? And in this interview, David Prowse...
They asked him about the possibility of a sequel.
Yeah, a possibility of sequel, and he says, I have no idea. Right, and of course I'm just paraphrasing here, but he basically is like, yeah, I've got no idea if George has anything planned. It was a fun movie.
But
we'll have to see where it goes.
That would be great. I'd be on board for that.
And then they just start doing exactly what we do on this podcast, which is, hey, let's just speculate. What if this crazy thing happened? What if that crazy thing happened?
What would you want to see?
What would you want to see? And he says, well, I think it would be an interesting turn of events if Darth Vader turned out to be Luke's father. Now, keep in mind, this is 1977. Mm-hmm. Script for Empire Strikes Back has not been written.
There was no intention
of doing one.
No official intention.
No official intention, yeah. Like, we're still years away from the glimmer of Empire Strikes Back. And so off the cuff, just, completely wild pie-in-the-sky speculation, he says, well, wouldn't that be interesting if Darth Vader turned out to be Luke's father? But of course, that'll never happen, kind of a thing. But that would be interesting. Then we get to Empire Strikes Back, and he, behind the scenes, starts taking blame or is assigned blame, I should say, for spoiling the end of the movie.
No. That was later in Return of the... With this, it was more. It was more just. It was Kurt's mention was like, yeah, we were a little uncomfortable with him discussing any of that. Like that was a little more than we wanted the actor saying or something. Like that one wasn't a huge deal. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was in the documentary. It was interesting to watch them tiptoe around this, because what I felt like the filmmaker was trying to say was, did Lucas take this from David Prowse's interview? Is that how Vader became Luke's father? But he didn't want to straight up accuse George Lucas of stealing this idea, which, frankly, if he says that in a public interview, that's not stealing by any means. But it's more just him going, does David Prowse deserve some credit for this?
Yeah.
But without wanting to straight up say, well, is this where it came from? And so everybody's kind of tiptoeing around the real question here.
Yeah, you can see all of, like, the Lucasfilm side of those people. They're
everyone
all
being
like,
so
well,
careful, and even the filmmaker being very careful about what he's asking, and it's like very delicate, and basically being like, no, it just seems like a lucky coincidence, like
So Prowse for Empire Strikes Back, he says himself that he starts noticing his stunt double getting
That was also Jedi.
It did start with Empire.
It started with Empire.
What happened with Empire Strikes Back
and
is that they had the duel between Vader and Luke at the end, and David Prowse was a very bad swordsman. Like, he was having a lot of trouble with the scene, and so they brought in his stunt double, Michael Aronson, I believe was his name. And so his stunt double ended up doing most of the sword fighting stuff, because it just wasn't Prowse's cup of tea. He wasn't really doing well with that. And so then when they got into Return of the Jedi, that's when the stuff with so that's where Bob Anderson got a larger scene as Darth Vader, because he's stepping in as for the sword fighting. And then you had the bit with the line, which I think we've discussed here before. There's not even Prowse and Mark Hamill knew what the official line was.
Correct, because in Prowse's script that he actually says on set is Obi-Wan killed your father, right?
And then Hamill reacts exactly as we see in the movie, and then James Earl Jones dubbed in the real line afterward.
Yep, and it was a big surprise for everybody.
Which we were just laughing because it's like, so, Prowse goes to the first movie, and is like, oh, okay, starts hearing it, and it's like, that's not my voice. What is going on here? That's weird. Okay. And then he goes to Empire Strikes Back. He knew this time going in.
And he's okay with it. And that's
James,
the other
James
thing
is doing the voice. We're cool. And then gets to the end, and that's not the line I said. What is going on here?
Which, it's a tough call. Like, if you've got a spoiler like that, I mean, if you've got a big reveal like that, I can understand wanting to keep it secret. Like, so I don't fault Lucas for keeping that under wraps. I mean, and especially in a time when films don't have as many big spoilers like that. But in a time when you don't have big spoilers like you do now, where you almost expect every movie to have some big, what's the twist, I can fully appreciate wanting to keep that secret, and I don't fault Lucas for that. But at the same time, it's you are kind of establishing a pattern here with this one actor of, we thank you for your performance, but we're going to change a lot of it, though.
Yeah. It is weirdly...
Without telling him, too.
Yeah, everything weirdly over his head instead of being inclusive with it. And again, with that one, I can even understand that. Like, it's not like he was alone in that. Mark Hamill didn't know the real line. Nobody knew the real line. But, Lucas, couple of producers, James Earl Jones, it was
you have,
very tightly
one hand's worth of people that know.
Yeah. Now, you'll have to check my facts, but I can swear I remember hearing an interview with Mark Hamill where they had told Mark... I wanted to say on set verbally that day what the line was actually going to be.
I had heard that too. I don't know if I have a source off the top of my head for it that Lucas right before they pulled it off was like, look, here's what's going on.
This is what you're actually reacting to.
Yeah, this is what's going to be said.
Because that documentary made it sound like that they didn't even do that for Mark.
Right.
So I'm not sure
who knows. That might be apocryphal, might not. But either way, still kept very tightly under wraps.
Yeah.
And not telling Prowse, it doesn't heavily influenced. I think he performed it well either way, so can't really fault that.
It's tough though, because if this was just a one-time thing, you would think, well, okay, that's just how things were. I can understand. But what you have is now a 2-movie pattern of people going, we're going to let everybody else in on the secret, but you.
Yeah. And then we get into Return of the Jedi. And it's kind of sketchy. So we've got director Richard Marquand. He's the new director brought on for that one.
Well, and in between 5 and 6, again, people now know that Star Wars is wildly successful.
Yeah.
And that everybody loves it. And people go, hey, wait a minute, Dave Prowse. Now that we've seen Darth Vader was revealed, and you said this 5 years ago in 77, or 4 years ago in 77, that Vader was Luke's father. Did you know? How much did you know? How was this planned all along? Whatever. And
I don't know if they did, if anyone did bring it up, because they brought it up in the documentary, and Prowse was just like, I said, what? What are you talking about?
He didn't remember giving that interview until the
and then, that's right. Yeah, he didn't remember it, but then we had photos of the newspaper article saying Prowse says this or that, and Prowse is like, well, maybe somebody
must have said it.
He says, either I must have said it and I don't remember, or people on set are just talking and selling things to
you're mixing up a story.
Yeah, wasn't it? Oh, am I?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
You're getting ahead of us.
So it was the I must have said it with that first one where he said, well, I'd love to see Darth Vader as his father, and they dredged that up for the documentary and showed it to him, and he was like, I said that?
Mm-hmm.
I have no recollection of that. So then after Empire Strikes Back, and I'm trying to find right now whether or not, because I wasn't clear quite on the timeline of when the second Notorious interview framed by that documentary happened.
It happened after the filming of Jedi. but before the release.
Okay. So let's start with the filming of Jedi then.
Yeah.
So Richard Marquand was the director brought on,
Right.
and Prowse was very polite, very diplomatic, very British about had the way he addressed this and everything, but basically just that he felt that Marquand did
like
not
him.
care for him.
Yeah.
Marquand was constantly having Bob Anderson, Prowse's stunt double, take over scenes that would normally be done by the actor themselves.
Yeah, things that he felt, he's like, I could reasonably be doing that. Why is my stunt double doing it?
Yeah, and he and Prowse was very polite and almost Canadian levels of polite. Was like
For reals.
Yeah.
Well, and the way they described it in the documentary was that the director wouldn't hardly talk to David.
Yeah, he
Prowse.
said he had never talked to him until
Yeah.
the one scene later on.
Yeah, right at the end.
It's, he was doing scenes, he was getting filmed, but he never actually spoke to the director. Never spoke to him.
Yeah, he would have other people, like the director,
he'd have
Marquand would
assistants
have
and others,
assistants go direct it while he was, so they'd be shooting on multiple sets, right?
Yeah.
And so Marquand would be doing other things, and he would assign other people to come work with Prowse.
So you had that going on, and I believe it was around that time too that his agent called him and said, "Hey, do you realize
are
that
you
they
aware?
Are you aware that they have cast someone else to play Anakin Skywalker in this film, and that when they remove the helmet,
You're not going to be in there.
That's not going to be you in that scene." And he was like, that can't be true, can it? Like, really? That seems, and of course, yes, it was true.
Yeah, he went and checked the call sheets and saw that,
and found that, yes, Sebastian Stan was cast as, Sebastian Shaw, sorry, Sebastian Shan would be Bucky, the Winter Soldier.
I was like,
would be our Luke Skywalker lookalike.
he said that name, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. No, that's not right.
Stan, all Sebastians are the same person, right?
I think so, actually. I think that's the thing.
Sebastian Shaw didn't actually die. He just went and jumped in the Lazarus pit and came back as Sebastian Stan.
Yep, I accept it. Headcanon accepted.
But yeah, and Sebastian Shaw was a classically trained, like, Shakespearean actor. He was very well known.
Yeah.
This is one of those things where it's like, I can't speak to why they did this. We don't have any official rationale behind the decision.
Well, we had
a little, right? They said they wanted, right, that Anakin needed to be older, right? Because Darth Vader needs to be Luke Skywalker's
But the problem
dad
there,
age.
of course, being that he doesn't just look old,
Yes.
he looks withered and decrepit and makeup-y. And with Ian McDiarmid
And
on
that's
set,
what I was going to say, is like, it's like, okay, if that's your justification that you want an older actor when you finally pull off the helmet, that's okay. I get that. But that doesn't seem to add up when you have a 30-something Ian McDiarmid playing gross, crusty old Palpatine.
And to say that you couldn't do the makeup on Darth Vader.
Exactly.
It doesn't hold
to
water.
say that, like, yeah, exactly. You can't put a bald cap on David Prowse and put some fake scars on him. Clearly, I mean, as a kid, honestly, like, up until the prequels, I honestly thought the guy playing the Emperor in the original trilogy was an old man.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until they get the prequels and all the news of, oh, it's the actual original actor. And I'm like, wait a minute, he's old. Hold on. So that means he had to. Wow, what a good job on your makeup, guys. He looks a crusty, wrinkly, old, nasty prune of a man.
Well make-upped and well acted on Ian McDiarmid's
Exactly.
Very much so.
So you can't tell me that you couldn't put, as far as makeup goes, if you want to make David Prowse look old, you can't tell me that was not possible because, dude, look at the Emperor. He's right over there.
My dual speculations on this, on the rationale behind it, are, one, just that they wanted this kind of wretched figure, right? They wanted him to be this, we take off we were all jarred the first time they take off the mask and we're like, that's Darth Vader on the inside? Like, ugh. Exactly. And David Prowse, even if he's laying down and he's a rather imposing, striking figure. Like, he's got a strong nose, strong brow, strong chin. Like, he's a strong-faced man.
He really is.
And I could see someone sitting there going like, no matter how much we make up him, he's gonna still be imposing when we take off that mask. And so I could see that being part of the rationale behind the decision. And the other part, again, speculation on my part, is that David Prowse was a bodybuilder who broke into acting, which we all know from personal experience, having seen lots of athletes and wrestlers and bodybuilders and such break into acting, that there's mixed results on how good of actors they actually are. And the only thing I have ever seen David Prowse act in beyond this, in which I didn't hear him and didn't actually ever see his face, all I've got is his body language, is A Clockwork Orange, which I haven't seen in 10 years. So I cannot really speak to David Prowse's acting ability, but given where he was coming from, I could understand and not fault him in the slightest if maybe his acting wasn't the strongest.
Sure.
And so maybe that's the problem? Don't know.
Well, and even like, I think as far as from David's perspective, in movies they do this sort of thing all the time. If you have a character that you don't see his face a lot, the person playing the body isn't necessarily the person that plays the face when you do see the face. It's not an uncommon thing.
Yeah, body doubles are very common.
Right.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But even so, like, he also, I don't know if they ever outright stated that he was like, yes, I was promised this, but he was definitely under the impression that it had at least been insinuated to him that at some point that mask would come off and he would be playing the actor underneath.
Yeah. Well, and especially if you've played Darth Vader for 2 movies and you get your contract renewed for a third.
And you're playing him in the third one.
And you're playing him in the third one, and they tell you, by the way, here's the end of the movie, he's going to take his mask off, it's going to be this touching story with his son. You have every right and reason to think, oh, cool, that's going to be me. Like, why wouldn't it be you, you know? Mm-hmm. And also, just as far as taking the helmet off, remember, we do see Vader with his helmet off in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Piet comes up, and as near as I can tell, that is David Prowse.
Yeah, could be.
I don't
honestly, that could just be a prop.
Because all you see is, maybe it is a prop. I didn't think about that.
It's hard to say.
Oh, okay, maybe that's it.
Well, we don't know. That's the thing.
We have no idea.
Because
it could be or it couldn't be.
As far as I can tell, nobody, like the first time that somebody else is the body of Vader is Sebastian Shaw in Return of the Jedi.
Right. Yeah.
Which means either it's a model that they're just clamping a helmet down on.
I bet it's not. I think it might actually be someone sitting there. Because one funny thing that I've always noticed with that particular scene is as the little clamp puts the shroud on his head and then lets go, you can see the body kind of stiffen back up to where it should be, right? Like there was some force being pushed down on the actor,
which
and then,
again
as the clamp opens, it
says,
lets go,
okay, so you've already done this with David Prowse. You've already given him the scarred, grody, withered, decrepit makeup, and it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So, man, I don't. And
the sad thing, though, for this documentary, one of the filmmaker's central things that he wanted to do was go back and refilm that scene with 80-year-old David Prowse playing Anakin, which they did, but cannot air anywhere because the mouse will destroy them.
Yep.
Well, it wasn't that.
At the time, it was the mouse.
Because
already.
the mouse will give them the Alderaan
let's be honest. Even if it wasn't the mouse, Lucasfilm would not have.
Well, and that's what they actually said in the film, was that Lucasfilm.
But Lucasfilm is owned by the mouse.
Yeah. Well, and even at the time he was making the documentary, it might have still been separate. But again, your number one suing people in Hollywood is Disney, followed by Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And then in between making this and airing it, they combined forces. Yeah. So I mean,
this was made a year after Disney officially took control.
It was released a year after.
Yeah.
So, that's legit. That's legit.
So that's what I'm saying. They might have been separate still, which is why they always referred to it as Lucasfilm instead of Disney. But either way, you're talking about the number one or number two suiest people in Hollywood.
Well, and the people who, if not already under control, are aware that they're going to be under the ownership of the suiest people in Hollywood.
Yeah, so it was not.
So they did record it, but they could not show it to us in the film.
Which is a real shame. It would have been awesome to see.
Unless you are really familiar with some dark and seedy streaming sites, you're probably never going to find it.
Well, and it should be said, they did actually premiere it. They had David Prowse come out, and they got a bunch of fans.
It was a one-time premiere, one showing only for like a theater's worth of people plus David Prowse.
Yeah.
But what is really sad though about that is I'm going, this guy has clearly got a decent and adequate acting career.
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly not bad.
And he's already been this character for 2 movies. If you were that worried about his acting chops, couldn't you hire an acting coach? Because again, that scene with Luke is not that long. Yes, it's important, and I'm not saying it's not important to the character, but couldn't you have hired an acting coach?
Couldn't you have tried and then seen, okay, this isn't working. Hey, David Prowse, let's talk. we don't feel like this is quite working. No
Rather
offense,
than, just being
let's
like,
deal with
nah.
the difficulties of this and be like, hey, can we work something out? Instead of just going, let's just do this behind his back. Who cares?
It's just so not cool.
It's uncool to the degree of like what Marvel did to Terrence Howard with the Iron Man movies. Have you heard about that?
I've heard some things.
Terrence Howard played James Rhodes in the first Iron Man
Rhodey.
movie, and then was replaced by Don Cheadle.
Right.
He was contracted to play Rhodes in multiple movies, and then someone somewhere at Marvel or Disney, when Disney took over, decided that they had the opportunity, like this was going big enough that they could get a bigger name actor like Don Cheadle to take over. Or maybe they didn't have anyone in mind. I don't remember the full details, but basically someone decided that they didn't want Terrence Howard playing him anymore, or they didn't want to pay him as much, and so they tried to get him to break the contract. They tried to convince him that and he was like, no, I contracted for this. I want to play.
The story that I had heard was that actually Terrence Howard started throwing a fit over how much he got paid compared to Robert Downey Jr.
Yes, because they cut his pay massively. I don't remember how much he made for the first film, but because they had the freedom on the contract they couldn't kick him out of the contract and he wouldn't let it go. So they did have enough leeway in the contract that they could adjust how much they paid him.
Yeah, that's right.
So they offered him a tenth of or something. I don't know the exact.
Yeah, it was a drastic reduction.
It was a minuscule amount compared to what he made on the first one. When logically he should have been making more on the second one, and it was genuinely just a huge middle finger. And he quite justifiably, I would say, walked out and was just like, "No, you can't do that." Like they basically forced him out of his contract and then replaced him with Don Cheadle. And then of course the story goes around. It's like, oh yeah, we're just gonna say that he got upset over money and make it sound like it's like, oh Cal, Hollywood, you're
the
horrible,
games,
you're all horrible, and Anyway, I would put this on par with that though. This is like David Prowse was definitely mistreated.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how many sides there are.
Yeah, and it's like and that's the thing is, it's like some of Lucasfilm's decisions. It's like I can see that, I can understand, the James Earl Jones voice thing. I get it. Even David Prowse is going, yeah, that was the right call. You could have just told me though beforehand, or it's like, okay, all of those things. It's like I can see Lucasfilm why you're doing that, but why didn't you do like the decent thing and just communicate with him? I think that would have solved all the problems,
So then came the interview.
Yeah.
After filming had wrapped, there's an interview done. Daily Mail did an interview with David Prowse where they had had a tip-off.
Yes.
From some anonymous caller.
Yeah.
Apparently on the set of the film, telling them that Darth Vader died at the end of the movie. And so in this interview that they already had, they called up David Prowse because they had interviewed him before and were like, hey, we'd like to do an interview with you. And in this interview, they kind of sprung on him like, hey, we heard this. Is this true? And he basically said, oh, I have no idea. Like, I can't.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
I don't know anything about it.
And he not only does he say, I don't know anything about it, but he says, even if I did, like, they've been really, really strict with this. Even if I did know something, I couldn't even say yes or no.
Yeah.
Like,
And that was, they actually had in the documentary, they had the reporter who did the interview sitting there saying, look, this is what happened. We got an anonymous call. Like, this is corroborated by the people doing the interview. But then when the article ran, it linked David Prowse, whether intentionally or unintentionally, or
wasn't it more of just that Lucasfilm assumed it was Prowse?
It seemed like, the article seemed
the
like
article was basically like, in an interview with David Prowse.
Yeah, like it framed it in a way that made it sound like David Prowse had said something,
even though it technically didn't say that he did it. They just heavily implied that they got the information from him, which of course he did not give.
Yeah. And that's why you have this reporter saying, no, we got a tip-off, we asked him, he said, whoop, nothing. And we put that tip-off in this article, but it ended up looking like David Prowse had said this. George Lucas himself called him into his office.
He was furious.
He was furious, and he's like, I didn't do this, I didn't say that.
But
it's not
they
true.
didn't believe him.
And so it definitely left some bad blood between them in the aftermath. here's the thing that the documentary I don't think mentioned that I found online as I was going through this that I found was intriguing. Because it mentioned that he's never been invited to Star Wars Celebration.
Correct.
No official Star Wars
convention.
That's not true.
Really?
According to this, the very first official Star Wars Celebration in 2007 or 2008, he was at. He was invited in an official capacity. Here we go. In July 2007, Prowse joined many others from the Star Wars films for the first ever Star Wars Celebration event held outside the United States. So it wasn't the very first one, but it was the first one outside the US. It was run by Lucasfilm, It was to mark the 30th anniversary of Star Wars. And then later, in July 2010, Prowse was banned by George Lucas from attending official Star Wars fan conventions. Lucas has reportedly given Prowse no reason other than stating that Prowse burnt too many bridges between Lucasfilm and himself. And the citations for that are from the Force website and, the Daily Telegraph in London. And so... that's apparently, and since then, in the 5 years since then, he hadn't been at any official things, and it sounds like he wasn't at many before that either.
Yeah.
It's very
weird.
A very tangled web. Yeah,
it is.
I mean, there was something that David Prowse early in the documentary. It was interesting to hear him say that he had tried to communicate with Lucasfilm and George and tried to apologize for kind of his part of things. And so I wonder if maybe there's more to the story than what.
Yeah, who knows? But it was very weird.
Yeah. But what we should also mention, though, is that it sounds like Lucasfilm has entirely blacklisted.
Yep.
David Prowse
he is dead to them.
All sorts of things, yeah.
Which is so sad, because...
especially for how gung-ho he is about being a part of...
Oh, yeah.
And apparently...
and that came across. That came across strongly in the documentary that he's like, I love Darth Vader. Star Wars is an awesome thing. Like,
his wife does not like Darth Vader.
Yeah, because he likes it so much. But he said,
because Lucasfilm,
because of how Lucasfilm
there's that too.
Him,
but he said something. He's like, I hope I'm a goodwill ambassador of sorts for Star Wars. And I'm like, that's like some honest, genuine love there for this franchise that clearly hates you. You know, at least the creators are like, no, be gone. You know?
Well, and especially when you look at they filmed that scene where that was wholly the filmmaker going like, hey, I'd like to give you some closure. Like, can we do this for you where you get to play that part? And if he wasn't a genuine fan, like, why would you bother at 80 years old to fly to Spain in order to record
to go through hours of makeup,
of heavy makeup and careful and this is, to be clear too, he has pretty severe arthritis and has for many years. Like, when they show him in the documentary, he's walking with crutches everywhere he goes. Like, getting around for this man is not the easiest thing in the world. Getting down on the ramp of a Lambda class shuttle is not an easy thing for him. So to go through that is very clearly a labor of love for this man.
Yeah.
Especially knowing that nobody's ever going to see this.
Yeah, for real.
Nobody's like, this is just for me. How nice of these people, and I love this enough that I'd love to do that. Like, yeah. Seems like a pretty sincere guy.
Well, and again, being so far attached to those movies that, I mean, he had that Darth Vader statue in his front entryway.
Oh, yeah, this, metal...
Well, and he had if you look at the background of all the shots around his house,
there's
a ton of Star Wars / Vader stuff all over his house.
I was even noticing in one shot of him just a little bit younger, it looked like he was holding a cane, but the top of the cane was the Vader saber. Yeah. So
that's awesome. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it just... I would love... that life. That much Vader in my life. Oh man,
you're almost there.
Let's be honest. We're getting there. That's my life goal. But it's just really a tragic
ending.
Very
unfortunate that.
Well, it's such a weird way to also even just treat that character. You would think that
because I mean, you look at the praise and love that like Luke gets, or Leia,
but I'm even thinking about Sebastian Shaw later, how he also gets replaced by Hayden Christensen in the flashback in the Force Ghost scene. You know, why can't you just leave it alone? Just
and it's funny because I almost look at it and just the whole tone of it just seems to be this like George seems to have this ongoing attitude of if it's not quite what I wanted, I will replace it, I will fix it, I will adjust it, and it's almost like Prowse was not what he wanted.
Yeah.
Like, he was the perfect stature, he had the movement.
Yeah, so you can't replace him because he's the only person who can fill the suit.
Yeah, he's filling the suit perfectly, but he doesn't have the voice, he doesn't act how you want or whatever, he doesn't have the face you want.
That's exactly it. He's the perfect fit for the suit, so we're not going to replace that. But we're going to replace the voice. We're going to replace the face.
We're not even going to let him in on the lines. Like, we're not going to trust him to do this. And I do almost wonder if there is just this kind of bias.
Him just like his first role.
Yeah, like, well, no, but legit, like, he's a big guy, and it's almost like there's just this form of bias against, like, oh, well, he's a large meathead, like, we can't trust him, or we can't, like, he can't do this, or I don't know. It is unfortunate either way.
Man.
Yeah. But hey, David Prowse, we love you.
It's true.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Loved him enough, in fact, that while we were watching the documentary, because I remember when I saw this a couple of years ago, I was like, I wonder, started looking up stuff, and he has his own website that had information about him and different things like that, and it also had a store where you could buy signed art prints. And I didn't have enough money at the time or didn't want to spend it or whatever, and so we were watching it today in preparation for this episode, and I'm like, I wonder, like, I've got a little bit more money now than I did back then, let's see if I can get some, and right on the front page, they're like, by the way, his health is deteriorating and his family wants him to just sort of be with them and whatever. So he's no longer signing new prints. So whatever we have left in the store is all that there is. So I was like, well, I know what I'm buying right now. So on my way to my house, also signed David Prowse Vader.
Yeah, he retired from public appearances, even doing any more signings in 2016.
A couple of years ago, he was like, I'm not going to any more conventions just because his health is...
Yeah, because that was one thing. At the end of the documentary...
Actually, I'm not going to go into any more Star Wars conventions outside the UK. He was still willing to travel within, and then a couple of years later, they were like, just no more, period, but I'll still sign stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's
right at the end, the closing credits almost of the documentary was saying how he and his wife were going to conventions still every weekend.
Yeah,
at the time,
just to visit and just to you know.
Yeah,
he clearly loves the fans and the franchise, the universe.
There was apparently a website that ran then a rumor article that he had Alzheimer's, which he publicly refuted and was like, no, I don't have Alzheimer's, don't have dementia, I do have some age-related memory issues.
Which everybody has, and that's nothing new. But
most people, But he did refute that, but either way, not necessarily in a...
Either way, I mean, old age is taking its toll, whether you like it or not, and that's just how it goes.
Old age for someone who's 6'6" and who has a history of pushing his body really hard
is gonna,
with bodybuilding.
take its toll
He was
faster.
in great shape, which is part of why at that age, at that size, he's still... moving around.
I want to tell one more story. I've told it before, but it's such a great story.
We skipped over this.
Yeah. So, in the middle of Return of the Jedi, right, David Prowse is getting increasingly more replaced by his body double for scenes that he really could and should be doing, right? That are not, above and beyond taxing or whatever. So, he goes to talk to his body double and is like, what's going on? What I've been in costume ready to go all week, Monday through Friday. It's now end of day Friday. What's going on? And he said, oh, well, we're trying to figure out how I can pick up
how we can film the scene where we throw
Emperor over this balcony. And he says, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, they're trying to rig it up or whatever.
And so this has literally been going on for 5 days.
Yeah, 5 days of filming, which is an obscene amount of time
Huge
for
amount to spend on
30 seconds of footage, so way expensive. So Prowse goes in, and this was the first time he
watches them messing around.
Watches them messing around, and he says, this is the first time I actually spoke to the director for the whole movie so far. This is the first time. And he goes to Marcon, and he says, hey, what is it that you're trying to achieve here? Like, tell me what you need done. And he says, we need Darth Vader to pick up the Emperor and chuck him over this balcony. And he says, I can do that. And he says,
what he says is, then just do it. Like, then just do it. Just
he's like, we're trying to do this. And he's like, well, then just do it. And Marcon is like, what do you mean? He's like, I mean, let's pick him up and throw him over the edge. And he's like, well okay.
You can do that?
And he says, he's like, so they take all the rigging off of
what he said was, the director said was, Monday. You can do that?
And he says,
Marcon's like, yeah. And Prowse is like, yeah, I can. And he's like, all right,
Monday morning, be in here. So he goes in Monday morning. None of the rigging on Palpatine to help lift him up or anything like that. David Prowse literally walks in, picks Ian McDiarmid up off the floor and throws him over a balcony.
Yeah, carries him over and throws him.
Yeah. Oh, and carries him over, by the way, with one stub hand because his hand has been chopped off.
Is in the. I don't know if they did if they just hid it in the.
They might have hidden it in there.
I think, yeah.
But yeah, that was the other thing I forgot to mention. It's just like, you can do that. And it's like, well, I wasn't heavyweight bodybuilding champion of the UK for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when the director was like, okay, Monday morning.
Yeah.
You know?
And I missed exactly what they talked about. He had hurt his...
He did injure his back.
Was it while filming that, or was it
while
before?
filming that?
Okay. Yeah. So David Prowse comes in Monday morning and he says, one or two shots, maximum of 2 shots to get this. I can do it in 2. And so he literally, and like, go watch that scene, people, and understand this is David Prowse lifting a full-grown adult over his head
with no problem
and throwing him. Like, he
with
does
some
that.
problem. He injured his back.
Well, yeah.
Nevertheless.
But you look at how easy that is, like, because for me, like, that would be, I mean, even if I were much stronger than I am, that would still be a struggle. There would be, like, some arm shaking going on.
Yeah.
You know, he picks him up like it is nothing, and, like, it's a good heave.
It's a good
heave, he gets, you know, and this is a full-grown adult man. That is so impressive. So he does it in the first shot. One shot, one take, that's it.
Yep. Which is good,
they got it all.
He injured his back.
Yeah, he did hurt his back a little bit, but it's like, and you can see that too. Such a note of pride in the back.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, one take.
They've been filming this from 5 days solid filming. Came in and did it in 1 shot.
Yep, just incredible. And really, when you go back and watch that scene, knowing that he's doing this without any assistance, there's no rigging to lighten the load or any. That is so impressive.
Ever since you told us about that on an earlier episode, I've been sharing that anyone I could find. That I was like, you'll appreciate this. I told my sister about it the other night, and she's just like, no. Are you serious? And I was like, right?
Isn't it crazy? It's so good.
And watching the documentary, I was like, that story's even better than I thought. Like, I didn't know the one take bit. I didn't know that they had literally spent 5 days trying to get this
and
right.
I'd forgotten the 5 days part.
And so I'm just like,
I think before you just mentioned it was a couple of days.
Well, that they've been trying like all day. Or that it's been a long time of trying to figure. And that's the thing is, I was telling it to her, and I didn't even go with that much because it just seems too excessive. It's like, oh yeah, they've been trying for 5 days.
It seems like you're making a story
figure
out
a way to make this work. Which is like, how hard can it be? You know, it's like, even if you don't have someone that strong, like wires, right? What's the difficulty here?
Well, and I can see that's the thing is wires, because you had the above shot of him walking him over, so wires would be very difficult to hide if they were
and in the way, and then like they could interfere with the actual toss, you know.
Oh yeah, sure, plenty of things to do, but
something.
at the same time, it's just like, well, come on, but still, how hard?
It's movie
could it
magic,
be?
right? It should be able to be done.
Yeah,
it's so incredible. It's one of my favorite shots in all of Star Wars. Actually, is Vader just being like, "Nope, done with you now, bye." It's so great.
So does that mean all the different shots were all on that same take too? Then I guess
it would have had to been. They did one take. I mean,
yeah.
And especially if Prowse is coming in saying, "I'm going to do this au naturel, and we're going to do it in 1 or 2 takes." I can easily see them saying, "Okay,
let's get
time out. Let's get every angle we can possible, so that we have a lot of choices to use."
That's probably why they didn't. That's why they didn't do it Friday night. Just a little longer. They waited until Monday
because
morning.
You've got the shot of him picking him up and walking him over. You've got a shot from inside the chasm looking up at the balcony. You've got the overhead shot. You've got another shot from a different angle from the safe side of the balcony. Like, there's like 4 different camera shots at least.
Well, and also, I'm sure that Markman was sitting there like, well, okay, you're going to do this, but it's going to take another day at least because we spent 5 days trying to get this right. And then Prowse is just like, here. Okay.
What's
next? Move on.
Everyone go to lunch.
Imagine how easy this movie would have been if you just kept me in the loop from the beginning.
Yeah.
Or frankly, if they could have just had him doing crap like that throughout the movies, like, oh, that's so cool.
Take advantage of the fact that he's a freaking
although it would have lessened the
national
impressiveness of him just being like, Hulk rage, pick up the Emperor, throw him,
Vader smash.
Because, like, as a kid, that was always so cool, because, like, Vader's intimidating and stuff, and you see him chucking boxes at Luke and stuff in Bespin, and so he's powerful, but it's another thing to see that, like, raw animal emotion where he just hoists a man above his head and throws him. Wow, it's like, dang, when you push this guy too far, Yeah, with the lightning, too. Oh, man. Good times. Good times.
Well, mostly.
Good times for us as the audience.
Yes, absolutely.
But, the tragic story of Darth David the Prowse. Oh, that took longer than I wanted to come up with.
I wouldn't say you quite landed it anyway.
And they won't notice the time delay
Oh, there
in
you
the
go.
episode. So
There you go.
Now, I mean,
Okay.
they will now because we talked about it.
Because we
but-
constantly point out our own adequacy. Oh, well, I think that's all I have to say about the documentary, other than you should definitely go buy it if you can.
Yeah, definitely.
Buy it or watch it or just find what
Definitely
you can.
watch
Definitely
it
worth
and
a
then
view.
buy it if you feel like it. I did.
Again, that's I Am Your Father.
Yep, I Am Your Father. It has kind of a Star Wars-y font to it a little bit.
Yep. Stars in the background.
Yep.
Who was the director again, so we can give them more information on where to find
It's
it?
Tony Bestard and Marcos Cabota. Marcos Cabota is the one we see talking.
Yeah.
He's the primary
He's the
drive
He's the one
behind
whose
this.
idea this was.
Yeah, and then Tony Bestard, I think, was just doing helping him do the video stuff or
Yeah,
something.
probably helping him with the
Yeah,
filming
I
and
don't
stuff since he was in front of the camera so much.
Let's not give him credit he deserves. Inexplicably. So, anyway, that's all we have until next week.
Yeah. Do we have any shout outs this week?
We do. I normally do them as part of the out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assumed that was.
Oh.
That's right.
Oh,
You
yeah.
do it after Kylo.
So be sure to
Not
follow.
bad.
I know it's the new room. We're all thrown off.
So disorienting. Ross's
chaos
books
in
are so
there.
horrible in here. They're all out of order.
Whoa.
Yeah, Chris has unfortunately had to stare at Ross's book. So Ross just moved. So all the bookshelves are all the books are on the bookshelves, but they haven't yet been organized.
Yes.
And Chris has had to stare at them this whole time.
Oh, I was just sitting here. It's like I'm an editor and a librarian. All of this being out of order is a problem.
Well, and see, here's the thing. We're
And
in
it's
the middle.
really not. I'm okay. But
We're in the middle of filming a Star Wars podcast, and you have not yet once mentioned how many different Star Wars decorations there are in the room.
I know.
I have been pleased.
I mean, come on.
I am pleased that you haven't yet organized your books, but you do have an X-wing and TIE fighter hanging from the ceiling by wires.
Yeah, that was carried.
Well posed. Yeah.
Yeah, in a cool battle pose.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, look, there's lightsabers here on this
Yep,
shelf.
stack
There's a
of
little Kylo
lightsabers,
Ren, a
little
Boba
Kylo.
Fett. There's a Death
got
Star egg timer.
Yeah.
We
Is
got
that what that is?
we
Oh,
got
that's awesome.
R2
Oh,
and
yeah,
Chewie
yeah.
up at the top.
Yeah, well, we got
BB-8.
R2 and BB-8 bookends here. That's nice.
I mean,
Boba Fett's right behind me.
and then on my desk
bobblehead.
we have my die-cast Millennium Falcon and Y-wing, and I mean, come
Well,
on,
those have always
guys.
been around.
So is this
I like
Boba
this
Fett
stormtrooper.
Bobble Fett? And Ross has in his closet, I'm not sure why it's not on his walls, a super cool Rogue One poster.
And we got over here Bambi. Yep. Porcelain Bambi on the shelf.
I mean, again, this is a combination of mine and Carrie's things.
Sure,
Which, surprisingly enough, though, most of the Star Wars stuff is hers.
Yeah, Carrie's a big Star Wars fan. And
Oh, I believe
it's
it.
one of the reasons why I
lightsabers are
approved so thoroughly of them dating.
Yeah.
Anyway, be sure to follow us on Twitter, @MoreCivilized. I appreciate the recent follows that we've gotten from people all around, including, I don't know his real name. It's something to do with Star Wars out in Pennsylvania. We appreciate you helping us build our link from coast to coast.
Right.
Hey, Pennsylvania Star Wars fan.
Yep. Anyway, it's like a rural Star Wars fan, rural Star Wars farm boy, something like that. I can't remember. And join our Facebook group, A More Civilized Podcast. There's a slew of excellent Star Wars memeage going on in there.
Speaking of the Facebook group, today's shout out goes to John Smith, the man who discovered America. I mean,
Very Pocahontas. Oh, wait, I mean...
no, not that one either. Who posted the link to what we talked about in our news today, actually, the 15-minute Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Yep.
reveal
Right in
trailer.
the middle of our recording, John.
Yep.
Fetching,
Literally.
spoiling our news.
I got bored with what we were talking about, so I started browsing Facebook and was like, hey, what?
Yeah. Oh,
And
one
discovered
thing.
that Ross already knew about it because apparently he was bored too.
No, I watched it live
I
this
know, I'm
morning.
just kidding.
Anyway.
Yeah.
One thing I did forget to mention in the news though this morning is that the demo ends with the Jedi person fighting one of the K2 units.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was kind of scary. The little clip they showed. Those K2 units they can bust some heads.
Well, unless they're being
So.
consistent about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought you'd like that actually.
I don't really
I mean,
care,
the
but
consistency.
yeah, I guess.
mean the.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Anyway, you can also speak with me on Twitter at Mr_R_star.
I'm going to take a moment to plug one more time my wife's comic that has recently started on Webtoons.
Oh, yeah. That's
It
very
is called
good.
Anxiousness, 2 words there. Look it up on webtoons.com. It's got 5 or 6 updates by the time this one airs. And I love it. I think it's going great. So And then if there's any topics you want to hear us discuss, any ideas that you've had that we haven't discussed before and you really think we should, you really, really burningly want our input on this topic, or just think it would be amusing, let us know. We'd love to cover it.
We're happy to do it.
Absolutely. And again, may the Force be with you.
Always.
I'm Anna Graves, and thank you for listening to a more civilized podcast.
Oh, strategy games. Nobody likes those, you know. Oh, Chris, if 2 mics weren't in the way, I'd punch you.
Ross may cut this out later, but I just want to remind everyone that you now have the Kyler quote. I have more money now than then, so I just want to see if I can get some.